political performance is the driver. You lost. Get over it.
Lawmakers approved plans to redraw voting lines in Texas to boost Republicans in Congress. Democrats say the battle is not over yet.
This is not over. We will continue fighting.
We look at the impact redistricting is already having, even as the fight over the map continues to a new phase.
My anguish is as infinite as the stars in the sky.
Heartbroken families share their grief in the wake of deadly flooding that killed dozens of children. The power change it's sparking at camps across the state.
The STAR test does not benefit students, teachers, and schools the way you think it does.
There's new momentum to change the standardized tests used in Texas schools. We look at what's in store for students and why some lawmakers are questioning the plan.
Produced from the Capitol in Austin and airing statewide, this is the award-winning State of Texas.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm Josh Hinkle. The battle over redrawing voting lines in Texas heated up at the Texas Capitol. Most of the House Democrats who were breaking quorum returned to the state, clearing the way for a vote on the contentious plan. While Democrats rallied outside the chamber, inside the House, efforts to change the bill fell short. In the Senate, Republicans pushed it through along party lines. Final passage of voting maps that could give Republicans 5 more seats in Congress. But Democrats do not have the votes to stop redistricting at the legislature. And this week on our program, we're looking ahead at what comes next. Democrats have vowed to fight this in court, but they've also taken the battle outside of Texas. And now some blue states are working on their own redistricting plans to help Democrats. For insight on that aspect, we're joined by Julia Manchester, national politics reporter for The Hill. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Josh, thanks for having me.
So you've written about the fast-moving effort in California to redraw their congressional districts. That plan still has hurdles to clear, right?
It does. I mean, we saw Governor Gavin Newsom of California yesterday essentially sign what the California legislature on Friday, I should say, or on Thursday, I should say, passed, and that was essentially giving them a green light to put this to California voters. So in November, we will see California hold a special election to determine whether they will keep their independent redistricting committee or get rid of it temporarily in an effort to combat what Texas is doing with redistricting. So under these new proposed maps in California, if the California voters decide to do away with that independent redistricting committee, we'll see that California Democrats would add 5 congressional seats, which would essentially cancel out Texas adding 5 congressional seats on the Republican side. But there are some hurdles. Of course, Gavin Newsom is going to have to campaign and get this across to California voters, get them on board. We've seen that former California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, who initially set up or was involved in setting up that independent redistricting committee back in the mid-2000s when he was governor, he has pushed back on Newsom when it comes to redistricting. So it's a long road ahead for Newsom going into November, but I would say that he has the wind at his back.
So California voters, as you mentioned, would need to approve their state's redistricting. Any indication of whether voters actually support that plan beyond what we're hearing from those campaigns?
Well, look, we've seen some polling, internal polling from Newsom himself or from his longtime Democratic pollster that would suggest that a majority of California voters are in favor of this and that they are against this idea of gerrymandering. Now, there was initially some polling that came out a few weeks ago that suggested that a majority of California voters did like the idea of the independent redistricting committee, but it's all about how this is sold to voters, Josh, and we've seen Newsom essentially say we have to fight fire with fire. He said that he doesn't want to gerrymander, but this is about them responding to Republican efforts to gerrymander in Texas, and we've seen that that plan that Newsom has put forth has also earned the endorsement of former President Barack Obama, someone who is seen as, one of the more powerful, experienced Democrats in the party. He voiced his support and his endorsement publicly for Newsom's effort earlier this week, calling it smart and strategic.
Julia Manchester, national politics reporter for The Hill. Thank you for joining us. The new voting districts approved at the state capitol could push out a Central Texas congressman who served for decades. We're talking about Lloyd Doggett, who was first elected to Congress in 1995. Right now, Doggett represents District 37. That's one of 2 Austin area districts held by Democrats. The other is District 35, held by Greg Casar. But the new map moves Casar's district out of Austin and turns it into a red district. Voters in the new District 35 favored Donald Trump by 10 points. Doggett and Casar appeared together at rallies opposing redistricting, but both Democrats faced questions about a potential primary showdown under the new maps, and progressives started voicing support for the younger congressman. Thursday morning, a group led by former state senator Wendy Davis called for Doggett to step aside to clear a path for Casar.
We want to make sure that we're not risking losing Congressman Casar and the incredible trajectory he's on right now, and his ability to represent Texas and honestly the country as a whole in the role that he has right now.
Doggett responded and said he would end his re-election campaign if the new districts survive court challenges. That rules out a likely primary against Casar. He said the statement from Davis highlighted division among Texas Democrats.
What did affect me from that is that beginning at 4 a.m. in the morning, a Twitter storm started and social media battle on Democratic chat groups. And it was just indicative of the fact that we're going to have a slugfest here if we have 2 Democratic members of Congress running against one another. That is not in our interest at a time our country is in such peril and when we need everyone united against Trump autocracy. And so that's why I decided to step aside, not because of what was written, but the reaction to it as an indication of what would lie ahead in a 6-month slugfest.
After Doggett's announcement, Casar had kind words for his fellow congressman. He posted on social media saying, "Lloyd Doggett is an Austin institution. I've learned so much from him. I'm grateful to him. The fight for democracy continues." Doggett emphasized that he is still running for re-election to his current district. He believes that courts should reject the redrawn maps that Texas lawmakers passed.
We did not send Lenny to a war zone. We sent her to camp.
The voices of grieving parents echoing through the Capitol as lawmakers voted on a bill to prevent another tragedy like the one at Camp Mystic. And medical freedom, or medical risk, why the governor added a push to make Ivermectin more accessible to an already packed special session agenda. This week, Governor Greg Abbott added a new item to the second special session agenda, increasing access to Ivermectin. The prescription drug is given to both animals and humans in the United States to treat parasites. Ivermectin grew in popularity as a possible remedy for COVID-19, although the FDA claims the drug is not effective. Capitol correspondent Adam Schwager talked to a lawmaker who wants people to be able to get the drug over the counter.
It was ridiculous that everywhere in the world you could buy Ivermectin next to baby aspirin, but not in the United States.
Joanne Shofner is a freshman representative in the Texas House and the author of a House bill which would legalize over-the-counter Ivermectin if authorized by a pharmacist.
This is one of the primary things when I ran that I wanted to have some sort of medical freedom. We have to be able to be free in order to select the medicine we need.
This isn't Shofner's first attempt at giving Texans the freedom to buy Ivermectin without a prescription. In the regular session, she authored the same bill and says the biggest hurdle to her work?
In 1994 is when the patent went out, so there's no money to be made on it.
However, not everyone is on board. Zeke Silva with the Texas Medical Association testified against the original version of Shofner's bill. He wasn't opposed to the drug itself, but says a doctor should be involved in making the decision.
You can imagine a scenario where a medication interacts with another medication, in this case, imagine warfarin, that might lead to a bleeding complication. And I think very important is the potential for post-procedural complications. In this case, neurotoxicity is one that we think about very seriously.
While supporters claim the drug is effective against COVID-19, the FDA disagrees. In 2022, a study was conducted on over 1,400 patients with mild to moderate COVID symptoms, with half receiving high-dosage ivermectin and the other half receiving a placebo pill. The study concluded the presence of ivermectin didn't change the recovery. However, Shofner says she thinks the tide is changing in the FDA.
Well, I think that's going to change soon, especially since Texas is right there. We'll be the 4th state after 3 other states, Republican states, that have it over the counter. So that sends a huge message.
For State of Texas, I'm Adam Schwager.
During a news conference, Governor Abbott credited Shofner for her work on the issue alongside State Representative Shelley Luther. Luther, another freshman representative, briefly went to jail in 2020 for refusing to shut down her Dallas salon during the COVID pandemic.
My anguish is as infinite as the stars in the sky.
Heartbroken families shared their grief in the wake of deadly flooding that killed dozens of children. The change it's sparking at camps across the state.
I just have no faith that our state will do a good job of it.
Teachers, parents, students, and members of both parties agree they'd like to get rid of the STAR test. The challenge is when it comes to replacing it. Powerful moments at the Capitol. Families who lost their little girls during July floods at Camp Mystic shared stories and memories. The families came to advocate for legislation to help prevent another tragedy, and their testimony pushed lawmakers to take quick action. A Senate committee meeting bringing out stories and sounds of loss.
Her last song she ever composed, Virginia's Song.
The parents of 8-year-old Virginia Hollis play her final composition piece for legislators, fighting back tears as they grapple with the daily, dark reality that their little girl is gone.
My anguish is as infinite as the stars in the sky, and equally as unfathomable, searing, blazing, exploding, a black hole of pain.
They came to the Capitol with other families who all lost their daughters at Camp Mystic.
We are the parents of Seal Stewart, the only camper from Camp Mystic still missing.
The campers swept away by a raging, fast-rising Guadalupe River.
The only way the Rangers knew for sure it was her was after I told them she had had alternating green and yellow nail polish on her fingernails.
Replaying the nightmare of having to identify her tiny, muddy body.
We trusted Camp Mystic with her precious life, and they failed to perform.
The camp has been scrutinized for not doing enough to keep campers safe. Both the Senate and the House advanced legislation to create more uniform safety standards for camps.
When I speak on this bill and for this bill, I hope I'm not just speaking for myself, but for the lost children, the grieving families who have called us, met with us, and shared their heartbreak and grief with us.
One day after the Senate hearing, many of the families returned to the Capitol. They sat in the gallery for the vote on House Bill 1. It requires youth camps to submit detailed emergency preparedness plans for floods. It also bans camps from building cabins in 100-year floodplains.
Let me be clear, nobody could have anticipated what happened that weekend, but we could have been better prepared.
Before the vote, House members paid tribute to those who died at Camp Mystic.
Lila Bonner,
reciting their names.
Chloe Childress,
and recognizing their families in the gallery before passing the legislation.
Members, this bill is for Heaven's 27.
Hours later, the families returned to the Capitol, this time to watch senators pass their version of the camp safety bill.
I can tell you that on a bipartisan basis, the members of this floor and this Senate are here to take action so that this never happens again.
Bill author Charles Perry worked closely with the families to shape the legislation.
You've acknowledged your strengths comes from your kiddos, and it will be with you forever. And don't ever, ever forget to lean on that in your bad days. But what you've done for me was your testimony and witness of faith in action.
Perry asked the families to stand as he read tributes to the 27 girls who died at Camp Mystic. Then they took the vote.
There being 28 ayes and no votes, Senate Bill 1 has passed in the honor of the 27.
A unanimous vote with the goal of saving lives. It's been more than 7 weeks since the deadly floods, but flood cleanup and recovery is still really just beginning in Kerr County. These burdens aren't just emotional and physical, they're also financial. Brianna Hollis reports from Kerrville about details just announced on relief funding.
This funding from the Community Foundation of the Texas Hill Country will first go to housing and then later allocate to things like mental health, quality of life, and future long-term support relief. And just like debris is still here along the riverbank, we may be 6 weeks or so out from the floods, but people here still need help and they still feel the pain of what this community lost.
I didn't even think about it. I've got 6 granddaughters, and every time there was a new report, it was just like, oh my God.
She's still heartbroken, but Tammy Ladwig says she's one of the lucky ones. Her family's okay, and her garage door business is on its way to full operations again, thanks to a lot of help from the community.
Country strong. That's the good thing.
But boots on the ground, neighbors helping neighbors can only do so much. It's not sustainable, and at the end of the day, full recovery requires more money.
Each of those dollars represent a face.
The Community Foundation of the Texas Hill Country, which has raised about $100 million in donations since the July 4th floods, pledged $40 million Thursday to meet flood victims' housing needs. This money is for things like temporary housing, home repair and rebuild, and down payment assistance. Something Brenda Espinoza and James Mike Trollinger are already starting to get help with through this process.
As soon as I opened the back door, we got hit with a wall of water up to our waist. Took us under her wing, and she says, I'm doing everything. You don't have to worry about anything. When I get done, I'll hand you the keys, and you'll be able to move back in.
Funding has also been made available for small businesses like Ladwig's, who's still adjusting to a new normal.
It's going to take a long time. So nothing happens fast, unfortunately.
While this private money makes its way to folks, some Democratic lawmakers say they wanted to see more relief funding come straight from the Capitol.
And I believe we're on day 47 now since the floods, and we know that Governor Abbott is well within his ability to send relief money, and he could have started that process on July 5th.
Governor, building off the state funding question, what is your reaction or response to some Democrats who have questioned why you didn't redirect state funds with emergency power?
Because the fact of the matter is that the state began spending money the day before the storm even hit. As an example of state money being used, in the first 24 hours, state resources were able to either rescue or evacuate more than 1,000 people.
And looping back to nonprofit funding, the Community Foundation says it can only give money to people who ask for help. So we show you how to do that on KXAN.com. And the foundation says you should get a call from a caseworker within a week. In Kerrville, I'm Brianna Hollis, State of Texas.
Thanks, Brianna. We told you earlier about camp safety legislation. It's one of several flood-related bills moving forward at the Capitol. Senate Bill 2 would establish a licensing requirement for emergency management coordinators and set up a registration system for disaster response volunteers that could include criminal history checks. Senate Bill 3 would require a state agency to determine which areas in the region that flooded on July 4th weekend should have outdoor warning sirens, and then establish guidance on how to install them. And Senate Bill 5 would pull money from the state's so-called rainy day fund for disaster relief efforts, including $50 million for sirens.
The STAR test does not benefit students, teachers, and schools the way you think it does.
There's new momentum to change the standardized test used in Texas schools. We look at what's in store for students and why some lawmakers are questioning the plan. Texas lawmakers are debating how to replace the STAR test, which is the end-of-year exam some Texas students take to assess their knowledge. Both Republicans and Democrats agree the current test creates too much stress for students, but how to replace the test is still in question. Capitol correspondent Dylan McKim breaks down the debate.
The STAR test does not benefit students, teachers, and schools the way you think it does.
This is Elia Moran, a 7th grade student in Fort Worth ISD. She told a committee of lawmakers on Thursday just how stressful the STAR test can be.
The STAR test creates that major weight on my brain where I can't think while the teacher is giving me information. I don't sleep well and I don't eat well. Now you tell me if that seems healthy for a child's brain and body.
Texas lawmakers want to solve the issue, and here's the current plan. 3 tests spaced throughout the year in the beginning, middle, and end. The first 2 tests are adaptive, meaning the questions change depending if the question before is answered correctly or not, and the results will be available for teachers and parents 48 hours later. The end-of-year assessment would be the same for each student, but party line disagreements seem to arise out of who will make the test. The current proposal gives that job to the Texas Education Agency.
I just have no faith that our state will do a good job of it, as it has not done a good job with the creation of the STAR test.
Democratic State Representative Gina Hinojosa would rather see students take a nationally norm-reference test, which would compare student outcomes to other states. She believes students would benefit if the state did not make the test. But the bill's author, Chairman Brad Buckley, believes students should be assessed on state-approved standards.
It is important to make sure our children are achieving success on those standards.
That is known as a criterion reference test. And Mary Lynn Prunetta, the Director of Education Policy at Texas 2036, a public policy research group, argues criterion tests are actually more useful to parents.
It tells them exactly if their kid is on grade level and then anything that they're specifically struggling with.
Prunetta supports the bill because she thinks it will decrease testing anxiety by clearing up the misconception that a student needs to pass the test to move to the next grade level.
One of the things that we have to do, and that House Bill 8 does a really good job of, is correcting a lot of that misinformation.
Dylan McKim, State of Texas.
It will take time to implement a new testing system. The plan calls for the change to take effect in the 2027-28 school year. Thank you again for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle. We'll be back next week to bring you an in-depth look at Texas politics.